Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Lens podcast presented by Jotniks Paranormal. My name is Chad Thomas, one of your hosts. I'm here with Kirsten Tricano and Jamie Widener. How's it going, guys?
It's going. It's been a weirdly quiet week. I'm sure that'll change. Well, I shouldn't say mostly quiet. We're now dealing with an 8-month-old who has pink eye. So it's a lot of fun wrestling to get the ointment in her eye.
I'm sure.
I did not realize how strong she was.
Yep.
Oh, many battles to come. One of many. Yeah.
It's just the start.
That's so bad. I'm sorry to hear that. I really am. Now, good luck.
I mean, we're on like end of day 2 right now, or end of day 3.
Okay.
Her eyes are looking better.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
good.
Anyway,
gosh,
you guys.
At least when a 17-year-old has an ear infection, they can take their own medicine and you don't have to fight them anymore. So
well, do you though?
You might.
There's a little
Right,
nudging of
so
doing it. That's
Yeah,
that's
they've
maybe
been
where it's
pretty
at
good.
now. But
yeah, they've
yeah,
been
you're right.
right. So it goes a lot better. It gets better, Kirsten. I promise.
It gets better. That's fair.
So, how about you, Jamie? What's going on with you?
Well, I realized something this week that it's that Mother Nature must smoke crack. Here in where we are in South Central Pennsylvania, it is now officially spring as of last Friday. It's spring everywhere in the northern hemisphere, but
Hmm.
uh, we went from a day 2 days ago of being almost 80, if not 80 degrees, to a day that was barely 35 in
Yeah.
a 12-hour stretch.
Yep.
Like it was 70 something degrees when I went to bed. I woke up in the morning and it was 35, and it didn't go up. So this is that season where we do the yo-yo effect, every spring, you wear a jacket out the door in the morning, you're in short sleeves when you come home. I get that, that's cool. But this is like, and there were people who were waiting for that 80-degree day to happen because they were in their shorts already, they're in their tank tops, they're in the usual inappropriate clothing that people shouldn't be wearing anywhere in public already.
Uh-huh.
Like it's like Superman, it's always under their regular clothes. They just rip it off. There they are. So, and but you can imagine that, balmy afternoon and going to that cool evening, all of a sudden you're like, ooh. So
Yep.
I don't know, but I am so ready for warm weather. And I think, the pink eye thing makes me think of it. We're all bundled inside still, and we've been there for so many months now of winter, and I know it's worse other places, and we have it here with snow and other stuff, and the northern tiers still has plenty of cold weather coming their way till it gets spring. But like I joke with my friends in Canada all the time, like, hey, those 2 good weeks of the year are coming up in the summertime, when the snow finally melts and the next one comes.
Yeah.
But it's just so ready. Let's just get there and go do stuff.
Yep.
I meant what I said last week too. It's time to start planning our vacations, which also around us is paranormal events and things. Like if you're not going to do an investigation, go look for the paracons, all the stuff. That's my drive right now. That's the energy I have. I'm looking forward and looking for those things, stuff for us to do, of course, but also those things to go do myself. To engage more and have more fun in the field.
I got my paranormal vacation planned out already.
Oh yeah.
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 All right. You want to tell us?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an episode later on. I'm going out to Illinois to Ashmore Estates to do a little public. So that's
saw that
going to
on
be
the
a lot of
schedule.
fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, I figured I'd do history and kind of try and get some photos and everything to put up and talk about my experience there.
Good.
Yeah.
It should be a good one.
It's going to be my first one away from the team. I'm going
I think
solo.
you're ready. I think you're ready.
I hope I am.
We have so
We've taught you everything we know, which isn't much. So
Listen, I got my dowsing rods now and my tarot cards. It'll be fine.
what else do you need?
that's all a girl
Nothing.
needs.
So
A
Exactly.
camera would be nice though.
That's fair. Nah, but still not necessary. That's maybe a conversation for another. Like, what people take with them. What's your
Right.
go-to stuff? Favorite equipment, favorite, tactics, things like that. That's probably an episode in its own right someday.
I think so.
Um,
Yeah.
I love to. We talked a while ago. Our former teammate, our sister teammate, Tim and Erica, formerly of Jotnix, New Jersey, now apparently of Jotnix, Florida. I hope. Um, with the equipment and so forth, love to get them on and discuss all the gear in the field and how it works and all that stuff sometimes. So, folks out there, whatever your go-to is, let us know. I'm always curious. Maybe I'll find something I don't know about. A piece of something to put in the bag. And there's never too many tools you can have when it comes to the field, because you never know what the environment's going to be at the place you go to and the circumstances. So what you always use may not be working there. Maybe something new is needed, something
Right.
different.
Now, speaking of paranormal places,
Yeah.
one of our favorites had their history weekend this past weekend.
Yeah.
White Hill Mansion.
Yep.
And I don't know if you guys saw it, but I think I shared it in our team chat. But Todd and
Carmelo.
Ormello were
Carmelo.
there and shared some information that they're looking to get a grant for some important restoration work. They're looking for letters of support, and I'm going to share that on our page eventually. But it needs to be in by April 4th. But if you can look at that when I get it up there and send letters of support, that'd be really helpful to them. I was going to say, I thought we'd lost Jamie. There's Jamie.
He's back.
Hey.
So I was just
Apparently, I may have an unstable connection, which is not the first time I've heard that.
Perfect.
But this case, the internet.
Uh-huh.
So bear with me. I'm sorry if I drop off. I'll come back, I promise.
That's okay. I was just saying about how White Hill is looking for letters of support for their grant funding, and I would share that on our Facebook page. And
Perfect. Yep.
if anybody out there who's willing to support, it would be great. So,
And
uh,
as a person who came from the nonprofit world once upon a time, letters of support they're immeasurable to help support the case that a grant seeker is requesting. And it's because I could tell you all day long about how wonderful my thing is, whatever it is, the place, the service, the resource that I'm offering, how wonderful it is, but it's my perspective of it, and
as
to
the
hear it from
entity,
others,
right?
the outside of it, people on the outside of the organization and the entity who are, willing to put themselves forward. It really goes a long, long way to build the case, for the support that's being requested. So, if you love White Hill as much as we do, or, and don't mind writing a letter, we'll make sure you know how to do it, where to go with it. We can't help you do it, but, it's not that hard to do. It doesn't have to be an essay kind of thing. It's just a recommendation saying we love this place. We think it should be supported.
Great.
Go from there.
So, yep, we will get that information up and share it. I want to say hi to a couple people. Stefan's here with us tonight.
Thanks, Stefan.
Bird, as usual, is here and says hello. And Heather was talking about vacations, and guess where they're going?
Oh my.
I'm jealous.
Uh-huh. Scotland in 32 days, and they're going to the vaults in 33 days. Not that they're counting or anything, but that sort of gives us a good transition into tonight's topic. If you guys are all good, if you're ready.
Yeah, dig in.
All right.
Let's see if we can uncover something here.
Oh, my.
All right, I'm done. Sorry.
And
I'll
that's
just-
how reviews go down.
It would have been a good time for my internet to go out.
Well, that's how it goes.
Give me about 30 minutes and it may happen. I just may vanish for a bit.
So- All right. So tonight we're looking at a famous structure in Edinburgh, Scotland. Before a single merchant set up shop, before the first carriage rattled over the stone, before the city of Edinburgh officially pushed south into a new era, something else made the crossing first. In 1788, the South Bridge was finished. It was meant to be a celebration, a triumph of Scottish Enlightenment, a literal bridge between the cramped medieval chaos of the Old Town and the bright intellectual promise of the South. And like many ceremonies of the time, there was a plan. The honor of the first crossing was granted to the city's oldest resident, a woman who had survived nearly a century of Edinburgh's transformation. But she never made it to the ribbon cutting. She died just days before the ceremony. But the city officials were determined if she could not cross the bridge in life, she would cross it in death. Her coffin, carried in a slow, somber procession, became the first thing to pass over the new arches. Not footsteps, not voices, just the weight of the dead. Almost immediately, the people of Edinburgh began to talk. They called it the Dead Man's Crossing, a bad omen. For years, locals, some of the most superstitious in Europe, refused to use the bridge. They would rather hike down the steep, filthy slopes of the Cowgate and back up the other side than walk on a path they believe had been marked for the grave. Now, to understand why this bridge was built, you have to understand 18th century Edinburgh. The city is built on a narrow volcanic ridge, a spine of rock that we call the Royal Mile. By the 1700s, it was the most crowded place in Western Europe. Space was a luxury they didn't have, so they built up. Tenements reached 10, 12, sometimes 14 stories into the sky, the world's first skyscrapers. Thousands of people were stacked on top of each other. Sanitation was non-existent. Disease moved through the tight alleyways like a ghost. And below it all sat the Cowgate, a deep valley cutting through the heart of the city. For decades, moving goods across that valley was a nightmare of steep inclines and narrow paths. The South Bridge was the solution. Construction began in 1785. It wasn't just a bridge. It was a massive viaduct consisting of 19 stone arches. But if you stand on the South Bridge today, you only see one arch, the one spanning the Cowgate. Where were the other 18? Or where are the other 18? They were enclosed. The city didn't want to waste the space. They built tenement buildings and shops flush against the sides of the bridge, effectively turning those 18 arches into a series of vaulted chambers. More than 120 rooms were created beneath the pavement. At first, it was a marvel of efficiency. On street level, you had luxury shops. Below them, in the vaults, you had the engine room of the city. Cobblers, cutlers, wine merchants, and printers. It was a layered city. It was efficient and forward-thinking. But there was a fatal flaw in the Enlightenment's design. The bridge had been built with porous volcanic sandstone, and it hadn't been waterproofed. Almost immediately, the street above began to leak. Rainwater mixed with the filth and waste of a busy 18th century street seeped through the stone. The vaults became damp, cold, and unstable. The air grew thick and stagnant. One by one, the legitimate businesses fled. By the 1790s, the engine room of the bridge was failing. And as the merchants left, the desperate moved in. By the early 1800s, the Edinburgh vaults had become a subterranean slum. There was no sunlight, no ventilation, no drainage. This was the era of the Irish potato famine, and thousands of displaced people arrived in Edinburgh with nowhere to go. And they ended up here. Families lived in total darkness, breathing in the soot of tallow candles and coal fires. It was a place where crime flourished because the law wouldn't go there. Unlicensed whiskey shops, gambling dens, and brothels operated in the shadows. There are even records suggesting the vaults were used by the resurrection men or the body snatchers. In a city world famous for its medical school, the demand for fresh cadavers was high. The dark, damp chambers of the vaults provided a perfect, discreet storage space for those waiting to be sold to the anatomy tables of Dr. Robert Knox. By the mid-1800s, the conditions were so horrific that the vaults were deemed a public health disaster. The city didn't try to fix them. They simply cleared them out, walled them off, and filled the entrances with rubble. For over a century, the vaults didn't exist. They were a ghost story whispered by historians, a theoretical space that had been scrubbed from the city's maps. By 1980, the shops on Southbridge were modern, the streets were paved with asphalt, and the thousands of people walking above had no idea they were suspended over a hollow hive of despair. Then came 1985. The discovery didn't come from an archaeological dig or a government project. It was a rugby player, Norrie Rowan, a former Scottish international. He had purchased a property on Niddry Street right against the side of the bridge. He was looking for a way to create a back entrance into his pub, the Tron Tavern. While exploring his cellar, he found a wall that didn't match the rest of the foundation. He broke through a small section of the masonry and found not just a crawl space, but a void. What followed wasn't a quick discovery. It was a grueling, months-long excavation. The vaults hadn't just been closed, they had been deliberately infilled to prevent the destitute from returning and to stabilize the bridge. The city had pumped hundreds of tons of rubble, stone, and Victorian trash into the chambers before sealing the doors. Norrie Rowan and his son began the backbreaking work of hauling that rubble out, bucket by bucket, often by hand. As they cleared the debris, the scale of the lost city began to emerge. They weren't just finding rooms, they were finding an entire subterranean neighborhood of 120 stone-arched chambers stretching across the valley. When the air finally cleared in the deepest vaults, they found a world frozen in the mid-19th century. Because the vaults had been sealed so abruptly, the artifacts of the people who lived there remained exactly where they had dropped them. They found thousands of oyster shells. Today, oysters are a luxury, but in the 1800s, they were the fast food of Edinburgh's slums, cheap, plentiful, and the only thing keeping many families from starvation. They found thick piles of leather, cut-offs, and rusted awls, evidence of the cobblers who tried to maintain businesses in the damp dark until the rot took their stock. They found clay pipes with soot still in the bowls. They found glass medicine bottles once filled with laudanum or miracle cures for the respiratory diseases that ran rampant in the stagnant air. But most hauntingly, they found toys. Small, hand-carved wooden figures and ceramic doll heads. Proof that these weren't just transit points or storage lockers. These were homes. Children had played here in this absolute darkness. By the late 1980s, the vaults were cleared, but they were changed. The silence of 100 years had been broken. Rowan even used the space to help hide a Romanian tunnel runner who had defected during the 1989 revolution, a final modern chapter of the vaults serving as a sanctuary for the displaced. But as the rubble left, the stories rushed back in. The archaeologists and laborers began to report things that weren't in the historical record. They spoke of the air turning thick and heavy in the south section. They spoke of a distinct, lingering scent of wet dog and old sweat in rooms that had been sealed for a century. Today you can walk where Norrie Rowan dug. You can see soot from 200-year-old fires still remaining in the arched ceilings. The Edinburgh vaults are a record of ambition, of failure, and of human survival in the darkest conditions imaginable. They are a physical reminder that in this city, history doesn't disappear. It settles beneath our feet, sometimes in the walls, and sometimes it waits. If we wait long enough, sometimes history begins to play again, and then we get to see it through the paranormal lens. The following stories have been compiled from many years of people's experiences and even a research study. So here's our first one. If the vaults have a king, it is the entity known colloquially as Mr. Boots. He is the most frequently cited and most aggressive presence in the network, specifically tied to the Niddry Street section of the vaults. Witnesses, ranging from skeptical tourists to seasoned researchers, consistently describe a tall, broad-shouldered man. He doesn't wear a Victorian suit. He wears a ragged, knee-length blue coat, possibly a coachman or watchman's livery, that is caked in centuries of filth. He earned his name because of the unmistakable sound of heavy leather boots crunched onto the gravel and stone floors. People in empty vaults often report hearing a rhythmic thud crunch, approaching them from the darkness. Unlike other spirits that seem residual, Mr. Boots is reported to be an intelligent and territorial. He has been known to whisper, "Get out," directly into the ears of visitors. In the 1990s and early 2000s, multiple tour guides documented physical attacks attributed to him. Scratches appearing on the back of the neck, or the sensation of being violently shoved when standing near the back wall of his preferred chamber. One of the most chilling documented names in the vaults is the Watcher. Unlike Mr. Boots, who moves, the Watcher is said to be part of the stone. In the late 1990s, a maintenance worker was repairing a section of the wall near the Cowgate Arch. He reported seeing a face, not a spirit, but a literal face peering out from the mortar. When he shined his light on it, the face receded into the rock. Since then, multiple photographs taken by tourists in that quarter have shown what appears to be a distorted, screaming face caught within the texture of the 200-year-old sandstone. Our next story isn't often seen, but instead Jack is frequently felt. A young boy. Now visitors, particularly women, report a cold, small hand slipping into theirs as they walk through the narrow passages. Others reported a distinct tug on their coattails or trousers. During the 1985 excavation, a specific room near the center of the bridge was found to contain several 19th century marbles and a small broken ceramic doll head. The room is now a focal point for reports of Jack. Investigators have captured Class A EVPs in this room. The sound of a young boy's laughter or a single whimpering sob that cuts through the silence of the stone. Now, not all entities in the vaults are rooted in the squalor of the slums. The aristocrat represents the bridge's early failed era of elegance. He is described as a tall, slender man in late 18th century attire, complete with a top hat and a walking stick. He is almost always seen leaning against the stone pillars, watching tours with an air of detached curiosity. He does not interact. He does not threaten. He simply observes. Witnesses report that he appears so solid they initially mistake him for a historical reenactor until he steps back into the shadows and vanishes. In the mid-1990s, a local Wiccan coven, led by a high priest who sought a place of deep earth energy, moved into one of the vaults. They spent years conducting rituals, believing the vaults were a thin place between the worlds. They constructed a stone circle and a black mirror for scrying. However, by the late 1990s, the coven fled. They claimed they had inadvertently opened a door to something they could not close. Today, that vault, often called the Coven Room, is a site of extreme physical distress. Visitors frequently experience the heavy chest, a sensation of being unable to breathe, followed by an overwhelming urge to run. It is the only room in the vaults where professional psychics have consistently refused to stay for more than a few moments. In 2001, the Edinburgh International Science Festival commissioned Dr. Richard Wiseman, a professor of psychology and a noted skeptic, to conduct one of the most rigorous haunting studies ever attempted. This wasn't a ghost hunt for TV. It was a data-driven inquiry. Wiseman took 218 volunteers who had zero knowledge of which vaults were haunted. He equipped them with heart rate monitors and asked them to explore the chambers alone. Over 45% of the participants reported unusual experience, but the key was where they reported them. The reports weren't random. They were clustered significantly in specific vaults that had historical reputation for activity, specifically Vault 13. This specific chamber produced the highest concentration of unusual experiences in the entire study. Participants who were blinded to the room's history reported white mists and dark masses moving across the corners of the eye, temperature drops of 10 degrees Fahrenheit within seconds, despite the vaults having a natural, stable thermal mass of stone that should prevent rapid fluctuations, the sudden overwhelming smell of rotting meat or cheap perfume, which would vanish as quickly as it appeared. Now, Wiseman didn't necessarily find ghosts. As a skeptic, he documented the following things. The vaults are located directly beneath a major traffic artery. Low-frequency vibrations were measured. Infrasound is scientifically proven to cause feelings of dread, nausea, and the sensation of being watched. Researchers found localized fluctuations in the magnetic fields within certain vaults, possibly caused by the iron-rich volcanic rock in the bridge's structural metal. These fluctuations can interfere with the human temporal lobe, inducing vivid hallucinations. In total darkness, the brain begins to fill in the gaps, creating shadow figures out of the static in our visual cortex. So those are all points that he came up to compete with the idea of the paranormal. So as we close our journey beneath the streets of Edinburgh, we have to ask, what are the vaults? Are they a biological trap of infrasound and magnetic fields, or are they a physical recording of human suffering? The Edinburgh vaults represent the gap between who we want to be and who we are. On top, the enlightenment, the bridge, the commerce, the intellect. Below, the reality of the people we forgot, the poverty, the crime, and the survival. The vaults are not just a location. They are a reminder that history doesn't just disappear because we wall it off. It stays, it settles, it waits in the damp and the dark and the silence. Next time you walk across a bridge, don't just look at the view. Listen to what might be happening beneath your feet. So before we discuss, here are some sources for tonight's information. https://canmore.org.uk/site/52431 Edinburgh-South-Bridge, maps.nls.uk, www.oldandnewedinburgh.co.uk, richardwiseman.wordpress.com/ghost-reports, onlinelibrary.wiley.com/journal/20448-295, www.mercattours.com/our story/history-of-the-vaults, www.nms.ac.uk/explore-our-collections. Explore-our-collections. That was a mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
So, thoughts?
I don't like that there's a face in the vault. No, no.
Yeah, but, you got pareidolia,
Ugh.
We like Wiseman said, we like to fill in the gaps when we're in the dark like that.
Yeah. I want to go to the Coven Room.
Mm-hmm.
That is one where this whole story of they open something they can't close. I would be very interested of just going into like. It's obvious they opened a portal,
Right.
but I want to know what came out of that portal. Because normally you can close them, and if they're like, oh, something came out and we can't close it, I'm like, ooh, to me that's strong. So I would love. I'm gonna do a road trip in 33 days to join the Lynches, so I can go sit in this room.
Pack yourself in their suitcase.
Why is this bag so heavy?
Heather, please let me know what it feels like.
Yeah, Heather said, I will let you know what the Coven Room feels.
Yeah, and with the we know the Lynches well,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
with the
Yeah. Yeah.
sensitivity they both have, I think this should be a very interesting experience for them.
I agree.
Obviously, looking
Oh,
forward to
absolutely.
hearing more.
Also, if you see the Scottish version of Slenderman, yes, don't go towards him.
Well, I'm going to go in a different direction. So I think I've shared this here before, but when I went to college, I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Hmm.
Right.
So and I realized a long time ago that there was, yeah, it's a living, but it's not a, you're going to be writing papers for your whole for your funding, and then you're going to be digging for a while. So that or you're an academic, and I did not want to do that. So change paths. But as such, I am incredibly jealous that this fellow knocked down a wall and found a whole
Right.
other world.
Uh-huh.
And it's happened a few other places in the world. It happened in India for a city there. Happened elsewhere in Europe. We built stuff underground for years, and a lot of times, places just got they just became less functional. Same issues. The moisture is always a problem. Anytime you're underground, you're in the water table. You run into problems as soon as there's extra moisture. It has nowhere to go but down, and it lands in your place. Right. Air, and breathable air for that matter. You start getting into places where you run into natural gases, that's compromise your ability to breathe. All those people breathing air at the same time, there's more CO than there is oxygen, and it starts to get unhealthy. There's all kinds of things that would cause places to not be habitable anymore.
Yeah. Well,
and be
lack of
abandoned.
light. Lack of light, having to.
The light. There's a whole lot of stuff, and there's a lot of health risks. I kept thinking, and this is an unusual thing. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's above ground or below ground, but the low-lying places tend to be where more poor people go, because people who can afford more, have more relative affluence, move to higher ground, get away from the things that extra moisture. And it's always like riversides, like in London, the same thing. The edge of the river, the Thames it was slums, for that very reason, and there was more issues because of it with health, and your lifespan was shorter there. So this doesn't surprise me. That once the opportunity left for it to become an income source for people, the businesses started leaving it. That poor people moved in behind it because they had nowhere else to
Yeah.
go.
Right.
It doesn't hurt that. Well, it doesn't help, and it doesn't hurt, I guess, either, that it was available and people were coming from other places, like the potato famine survivors were coming over. They were going everywhere they could other than where they were.
Right.
And, a lot came here to the U.S. as well. But, elsewhere in Europe, is wherever they could go, wherever they could afford to go. It makes sense, and then you have to have a place to live. So this occupied quickly. It's all too common all through history. But man, the being the first one to knock that wall down and realize I got something here, man, that's every archaeologist's dream moment.
Yep.
Like the mother lode kind of moment. So kudos to them, and for doing the work. And that's the other thing. I could have just went, oh, that's weird, and left. Walked
Right.
away from it. They made the
Yeah.
effort to excavate and really do the dirty work,
Hmm.
the hard work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we
I'll
all
be
came
on
together.
the other side of that because you're on the archaeologist standpoint. I'm going by the horror movie standpoint. If I uncovered something like that, the part of me is gonna be like, there's gonna be some creature or some murderer down here. I'm not. Now we're just gonna close this back up. I've seen the movie Barbarian. No, no.
Well, I
Fair
want to
enough.
catch up on some comments here. Stefan says the gentleman who stands and watches, who seems solid, is definitely intriguing.
Yeah,
I mean, and this is, it's not uncommon for this. Like there's been a lot of places, even Fort Mifflin has had this, where
Yes.
people think it's a reenactor, and then all of a sudden they're just gone.
Yep. We heard that story directly while we were there, in Gettysburg, for that matter, too. The same kind of era.
Right.
Reenactors are common in these places, and these folks are, this person appears in period clothing. Therefore, we assume, because that's what we've seen.
Right.
That's logical,
Yeah.
until they simply disappear.
Hmm. Stefan also said messing with portals is always a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, sometimes they're natural and that, things come and go. I mean, I know I had a friend experience that at the Fulton. I've talked about that, how all of a sudden they were staring at somebody who was staring back at them and we're like, why are you here? And why am I here? And then they just poof disappeared back through the portal. Like they had
So-
gone to the wrong place at the wrong time and yep. So,
an outdoor theater that I have acted at, yeah, one of their main stages, I've heard stories that a group of pagans that have shops there opened a portal on that stage, and was told to me after every time I was on that stage and I'd get off, I'd just feel drained, like I had no energy. And someone's like, it's because of the portal here, and it's like, the what? I I don't like portals.
yeah.
Oh, come on. Hold on a second. So, people who, well, okay, I'm going to say something stupid, I guess, but people who open portals should know how to close them. Like that, you shouldn't do it unless you can, right?
Yeah,
So-
you
Shouldn't,
think
but
they
that doesn't mean-
should?
That's where I go. But because just and it's one of those things. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
But
But
how many
that's my sensibility. I know that doesn't exist for all, and I understand that. It's
Right.
just like every time you hear about it, you're like, why?
Well, how many people pick up a Ouija board because it's just a game and play
Yeah,
with it and don't
It's
know what they're getting
advertised as a
into?
children's toy.
Sure,
You know?
fair enough.
So, let's see. Bert also said, I wanted to take equipment, but I think I wanted to feel it without focusing on equipment.
Yeah.
And I think
And
this
some of
is
these places don't let you, right?
Yeah.
We've come across some of that.
Right.
You take like Gettysburg's a great example there. You take equipment out into the battlefields, and they'll turn you away, if not confiscate your gear. It's not for that.
right. But I understand where Bert's coming from here because I keep getting the sense that I'm being told stop relying on the equipment because you're never gonna build your senses if you always rely on equipment. But I can't put the equipment down. I always have to take it with me. So
I will
I-
smack it out of your hand, sir.
See, I'm like you. The equipment to me feels like a safeguard to be
it's a
like
crutch.
solidifying. Like, yes, this is stuff that could be happening. I think that's why, like, I got dowsing rods. I've started trying to use my runes and tarot cards more, just because I'm like, I want to start relying on myself more than equipment.
Yeah.
That's why I said I want a camera. Mainly to the fact of if I'm in a room by myself doing all this stuff, the camera could be picking up things that I may not be seeing happening.
Sure. Well, I'm going to say this from the unsensitive person's perspective. I use equipment because I don't have the sensitivity that you both have and many others have that I trust. However, I will say this, and this is the muddiness of it, is every time a piece of equipment activates to whatever it's supposed to do, whether it be a REM pod, whether it be a K2, whether it be any other device that, lights or makes noise or whatever, my first thought is to figure out what it was that's physical first. And that takes over, and it takes away from the moment of something that it could actually be if it is paranormal.
Right.
So if you don't bring it into the equation in the first place, you can experience the moment that you're in more,
Right.
perhaps,
Yeah.
than you would be trying to invalidate the activity of your equipment to make sure it's not a false positive or some physical thing in the space you're at.
Right. I'm going to
So-
bring up a comment that Bert has here. I lost some of my ability because of focusing on equipment too much, and I think this is sort of tying into what you said, Jamie. It's because you're like, well, okay, what made the equipment go, instead of just sensing it and trusting it.
Yep.
So, and I think you lose the ability and you don't develop it at the same time because the more you look at equipment, it's like, oh, but sometimes it's just nice to have that affirmation of what you're feeling is happening at the same time as equipment going off. So it's a trade-off, and maybe it's good to go with somebody else who is unsensitive and has equipment and can man the equipment, and then so you have that balance.
Yeah, that's a trait, and that's why you investigate in teams, right, or pairs, or groups, or whatnot. So, and you have, if you can, accommodate people with different skills, to do so because of
Mm-hmm.
that very reason. If everybody is focusing on one direction, you're going to miss something anyway.
Right.
One pathway, uh, of avenue or whatnot.
Right. So Stefan also was commenting on the Ouija board. He said, I joke in a serious tone with customers at work who want to purchase a Ouija board that they need to sign a waiver to purchase.
And do
You know,
they?
I think my favorite thing with a Ouija board I've seen was a video of a dad that went down to the basement because his daughter was having a sleepover with a bunch of friends and they were playing with a Ouija board and he started hitting the breaker. So the lights would just go on and off. I'm like, you know what? I'd do that.
Mm-hmm.
I had an experience as a teenager at a party at a friend's house, kind of thing. We were all in the living room with a Ouija board. I stepped away to use the bathroom, which was upstairs, of course, the second floor, And this is a house with the front and back stairway. So I knew there were snacks in the kitchen. I went down the back steps to get a snack and a drink. As I'm coming back through the dining room to the living room, they're there and they're saying, "Hey, if you're here, give us a sign," kind of thing. The stuff we do. And I realized I was stopped right next to the light switch. You know me.
I know. I've been with you, Jamie.
Yeah.
This is me, and of course I had to.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, there were just as many boys screaming as there were girls in that party. So, and I came clean on what I did, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, I was with you in what was it, West Virginia, where you did the same sort of thing. So,
Yeah, this has been a jerk all my life. So okay.
Stefan said it catches most of them off guard. So,
Right. Well, people don't realize, the the perceived seriousness of using a Ouija board could be anyway.
mhm.
Yeah.
For many it's a toy, and it's fair to say it is. It's made by Hasbro or Parker Brothers or one of those game companies. I get it. But the reality is it could be more than that. So maybe it should come with a waiver. I like that actually.
Another
Could you
comment.
we were at the bash, Chad passing all the Ouija boards and
Ooh.
such on this. There was probably 100 different options, their models and styles and such. It was a wall of them. Wow.
And you remember my experience when I walked past them?
Yeah,
I-
it was
I-
one. It was one that stood out. Yep.
Yeah, I was. The year before that, they actually had a whole room full of Ouija boards that
Ooh, no.
I walked in and I was like, nope, not for me. And I walked right back out.
That's like walking in a room full of dolls. Forget it. I'm
There-
done.
There's a shop at the PA Ren Fair. They have a Ouija board and it's not closed, it's open. And every time they're like, hey, you should come in and just look around the shop. I'm like, I can't. Like, there's something connected to that Ouija board. I can't.
Yeah. So
I-
um, Heather also said sometimes equipment makes you doubt what you were feeling.
Yeah.
yeah, that's fair. The funny thing is, it's not as much a validator as an invalidator here.
Mhm.
It is gives you pause.
Yeah. So I don't think Stefan likes dolls either, Jamie.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. And many do. I get it. And we've worked with we've used them in several of our investigations.
Yeah.
Especially the brewery. We know there were children there, and girls for that matter. So it makes sense to bring them as trigger objects. But there's something. I think of
Was either one of you there when we watched the doll get thrown at one of the guests?
No.
that was not a
Oh.
session I was at.
Oh no, it was me and Jay. There were two women sitting at the chair, like sitting in front of it, where we would always put the dolls. And I don't remember her name, but she has like one leg now. The doll was sitting on the chair, and the women were joking, like, "Watch this doll get thrown at us." And as they're laughing, it looked like someone had grabbed the legs of this doll and just yanked it at them.
Wow.
I think that was also the same night the cat ball went flying at someone too, because they made a joke about the cat.
Interesting.
That
See,
would-
I don't think I remember these things.
I have no recollection of that, but that's we've had poltergeist activity on
Yeah.
site there before, so that's It's on par.
There's a reason
Wow.
why I hate those dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the broken leg is my fault actually. So
I was
sorry.
going to blame it on the doll being thrown at the guest, Jamie, but if you want,
No, and I know when it happened. Even we were packing up after a night at the Haldeman a long time ago, and she was a little too close to the car door, and they shut it. And yeah,
No, it's an old looking doll. It's creepy.
yeah,
I hated when I had to go set them up.
yep, me too.
Don't like them.
Especially after I broke mine. I was responsible. It's sad.
were you responsible, Jamie, or were you irresponsible?
Were you purposely trying to do it?
Actually, both in this case. You're not wrong either way. So yeah.
All right. Here's another note from Heather, not related to anything we've talked about other than we mentioned Gettysburg. LJ's Boy Scout troop is camping for 2 nights in the Gettysburg battlefield. They will be sleeping on an old hospital's, where an old hospital was. I'm so jealous.
Do you need chaperones?
Yeah.
Just saying. You got clearances.
Hey, same.
Yeah, we all three of us have clearances, so we're good.
I got a 12-man tent. I can do this.
I got an 8-man tent.
I can do it comfortably.
I don't have a tent.
Well, you could. My tent has 3 rooms. We can share.
Yeah, I'll bring the 8-man tent for myself. And you guys can share the 12-man tent.
Yeah, we got pop-ups. We got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
We're ready.
Yep. So,
Oh my.
anyway, back to the vaults. What do you?
Well, I want to mention one more thing here. And I think it was really interesting. Toward the end, you noted that there was the study with 218, I believe, volunteers, and of that, 45%, you said, had experienced unusual activity or something they considered unusual.
Yep.
And being that they were more clustered in the specific spaces, you mentioned Vault 13 specifically, which is a great number, of course, to have weird activity in.
Okay.
Right.
But the things, the temperature changes, smells, dark mists and white mists and so forth, all the stuff that is common, in the paranormal claims of spaces and places, that we're familiar with. But the one thing and you move right to the optional things that it could be, the infrasound brings, that is something that intrigues me, because we get to go into a lot of spaces that are in what I'll call urban areas or community areas. It's not like a White Hill where it's out on the edge of town, on the end of a long field, nothing around it that can really give you any pollution, light or sound. A lot of times these places are in the middle of a town or a city, and there are people and activities and things like that. And that's something that we may not, in our world at least, consider often enough to be a consideration or a catalyst to activity that we're experiencing. Because, I think of the infrasound, I'm going to stretch out here a little bit, but tying it to what is called the Havana syndrome. Are you familiar with this? There was, in the spy world, in the CIA world, there was a consulate. We have a consulate in Cuba, and the folks who worked at our embassy were impacted by this ringing sound in their ears that they couldn't get rid of. And there's more to this than I'm probably giving it, but for quite a while they were impacted by it, and they had to leave. And it came back around to the belief being that they were attacked by some kind of sound weapon, which would be in the spirit of infrasound. So it's interesting, because we all have a frequency, and we're in a comfort zone of it. But when you go above and below it, we start to, it's kind of like with electromagnetic energy. We're all at a certain frequency of that, but when we get above and beyond it, we have reactions.
Right.
And in some cases, it leads to hallucination. It leads to unnatural behaviors for ourselves. The things that we wouldn't normally do. So agitation,
Right.
aggressiveness, things like that. So, maybe this has a place here as a legitimate rationale for why people were having activity. Now, if it was across the entire complex of the site, which is massive, then probably not. But if it is heightened to a certain space, I think there might be some correlation that can at least account for some of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting that that's 45% is a pretty large, size of the group.
Yes, it was 98. That's 98 people out of 218.
So I rounded up a little bit, but 98 people out of 218, that's a lot. So, and are they naturally inclined to have sensitivities of some kind or another? Perhaps, and how we know,
Right.
we talk about this all the time, how things happen for two people standing side by side happens for one and not the other.
Right.
Maybe they're predisposed in some way to have
Mhm.
the attunement needed to connect. But I think that's really kind of cool that someone actually went to the work of doing a physical scientific investigation instead of just ghost hunting, and telling stories, because stories change, and how we go as we talk about folklore all the time and whisper down the lane how urban legends are born, those kind of things. But this is real. This is like some actual facts. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was surprised to see an actual study had been taken place here, so that was pretty cool. Bert said that they would look for the woman in white since there was no no documentation of one.
Well, there's white mist, so
Well,
maybe.
maybe. Um, and Stefan has an interesting little story here. He was sitting at a cafe with a friend talking about a universe sending him a ton of signs. Shortly after said that, a sign on the counter like 10 feet away from me was flung off the counter towards my friend and I. That was a crazy sign unto itself.
Yeah.
So it's the little things.
It makes me think of the comedian Jeff Foxworthy, or was it Bill Engvall from the Redneck Comedy Tour back in the day, the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. People ask him stupid stuff, and he says, "Yeah, here, da da da, and here's your sign because you're sign you're stupid."
Uh-huh.
Not saying Stefan is stupid by any means, but that, or the friend, but that moment where here's your sign, it becomes kind of obvious, and
Yep.
that's interesting though.
Hmm.
It's a real world experience.
Yeah. Sort of like the picture at Whitehill.
Yes. Or the mag light the first night we were at Boobies.
Hmm.
Hop in the bar and getting across the floor.
Yeah.
So for the one thing that I've learned out of all of this history, all of this story, all of this interesting thing, is that when you build a new thing, you create something new. Do not let the first thing to cross it be a coffin. That's it. It's as simple as it is. Just don't do it.
Yep.
Right? I think this all could have been avoided.
Probably. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the woman had just held on, a couple more
Just
days.
5 more days, right? Goodness. I appreciate that though. Like,
Yeah.
when you are that member of the community that is revered as she apparently was, and, had earned that position of honor, I appreciate they still went forward with it. That's cool. But, this is an era when, we didn't have as much savvy as we do now. And, witchcraft and things, all the dark art stuff was very common and believed commonly around, so all of a sudden something bad's going to happen because of this. That's folklore 101, right?
Right.
It takes a couple things, to make it, and it has legs. It's lasted this long. We are, 300 years later.
Hmm. I mean, the fact that some people would want to, travel several hours out of the way to avoid walking on that bridge.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
real.
pretty telling. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
Or it tells you how stubborn Scottish people really are.
Well, there's that too.
One or the other. One or the other.
So yeah, there are definitely some interesting things here. Don't know what's true or not, but it's definitely interesting.
Well, I think I'm gonna be willing to say that we go paranormal or not, haunted or not, all that stuff. I would say, yeah, I think there has to be activity here.
There's got to be.
Right.
There certainly is. It's aged. It's of an age, and of a use. There were people with passion there. There were people who were there with no other choice. there was tragedy, there was trauma.
There was people opening portals.
There's that. There's mystery, intrigue. There's all kinds of cool things through all these centuries of use and misuse and unuse. I'm just happy it's available. Like someone rediscovered it. And it could still just be sitting waiting. And it's a time capsule, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the last thought of my archaeology side is like this would have been so fascinating to find all of these artifacts and be able to dig into what life was like for the folks who lived there without anything changing over all these years. That's just a gold mine of opportunity for folks in the field.
Right. Yep. So, yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it's haunted. Bert thinks it's haunted. Heather's a Scot, so I'm not sure.
Well,
I'm
I
sure
said what I said, Heather. I said what I said.
So,
Mike Myers, the comedian, used to be on Saturday Night Live, did a bunch of skits, and one of them was he was a Scottish shop owner. All things Scottish was his store, and his famous line was, "It's not Scottish, it's crap." So
right.
I always think of that.
Yeah. Bert said it would have been sad to find the toys.
Of course.
Yeah.
But to turn that to the positive, there were toys. That means they had something, more than just a hard scrabble life of being in the dark and lack of resources and all the environmental problems and stuff. At least there was some
joy for somebody. Yeah.
Some joy,
Yeah.
right? Thank you.
So, good.
Although wooden toys you can get splinters, so maybe not. I don't know.
Well, there's also ceramic.
Yeah, there you go. That's some affluence too, though. Like that's not a common thing.
Yeah.
That would have been purchased, not created. So I mean, that's a really cool, good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So always positives when you're and negatives. So.
Yep.
So. All right. Well, any final thoughts on this before we look at what's coming up?
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, next week I am going to address the Bridgewater Triangle, and this is in the U.S. state of Massachusetts. And we like triangles, so it's our favorite shape on Paranormal Lens. This will be, I think, our fourth or fifth triangle episode of some size, shape, or place. So, looking forward to digging into that for you, and won't give too much away other than to say it's going to be exciting.
Okay.
Let me find my cursor. There we go. After that, on April 7th, we have Lured to the Deep, Legend of the Siren. That'll be Kirsten. We're going back underground on April 14th to the Williamson Tunnels, Liverpool's Buried Past. I'll be back on the 21st of April with the Monte Cristo Homestead in Australia. And then this one's going to be fun for Kirsten, The Exorcism of Annalise Michael. So we chatted a little bit about this earlier in the week, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about this as well, so I'm really excited you're going to do it.
I mean, if I can somehow get the recordings from this exorcism pulled, I think it'd be really cool to hear.
Yes,
They're eerie. Like, I've heard them. I've probably listened to them a million times. I can't explain them.
Yeah, it's out there. So,
Yeah.
More to come. All right, and how to find us. So, this is obviously very live episode. So if you've been with us tonight and you want to rewatch, there's all kinds of ways to do that on the streaming services coming up. But if you want to reach out to us, you can reach us at www.jot-nix paranormal.com. That's JOTT-NYX paranormal.com. If you want to give us some heads up on an episode, perhaps you'd like to see us do, or a topic for us to investigate or dig into for in a future episode, or just comments. It's like, hey, you guys are great. You guys suck. Whatever. We'll take it all. Mm-hmm. You can email us directly at paranormallenspodcast@gmail.com, or if you want to check all of our socials, the good stuff that we do, and also our team store. All the fun stuff we can offer. We have a link tree, which is linktr.ee/paranormal lens. And as always, we have a Buy Me a Coffee, which is helping to support the program. If you're liking what you see and want to keep us going, it's buymeacoffee.com/paranormal9, or the QR code visible on your screen if you're watching us. We appreciate any support we can get. Obviously, there's some overhead in operating the podcast. The streaming services aren't free, unfortunately, and costs keep accelerating. So we're going to hang on as long as we possibly can. But there may come a day we have to make a decision there. So it's not tomorrow, luckily, or today. So,
Sure.
but we appreciate the support. If you're interested and able, thank you so much. And I think it's everything, right?
Yeah.
So, Jay, this was a fun topic. It really was. And
It was.
I'm gonna make a pun here to say, but you never know what you're gonna get sometimes until you dig into it, right?
Yep. Yep.
But we say that all the time. Like we start out with a selection of a topic, sometimes months in advance, to get it on our schedule, for our calendars built out. And then, you kind of get through other stuff, you get to other stuff, and then, okay, this one may not have as much as some other episodes do as far as the meat on the bone of the episode. And it turns out to be a gem.
Yep.
And I think this one really did. So I'm really glad you took this topic on.
Yeah, it was
I
fun.
learned a lot.
So, Bert has a request for April 28th.
Hey, you're a paranormal investigator. 2 a.m. is not so late. You can do it.
Yeah.
So,
We believe in you.
yep. So, well, do we have any final thoughts before wrapping it up tonight?
No?
I don't. Let's go.
All right. So, people still hear footsteps in empty rooms. They still feel watched in the dark, still walk through those vaults and leave with the sense that they aren't alone. If the very first crossing over that bridge was the dead entering, then maybe they never truly left. The Edinburgh vaults remind us that progress always leaves something behind, and sometimes what's left behind doesn't stay buried. Stay alert, stay respectful, and stay curious. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.